Hey guys, here we are. It's the 5th of May, I believe, today, and I'm going to give you a tour of the engine room of the allotment. And these are my 3 hot composting bins. Now these 2 bins, this one is for made compost, so the compost starts in that bin, which is the most heavily insulated. It moves into the second, then it gets turned into the third when it's finished. And when the compost is finished in there, this bin here is kind of an overspill, so it can be just topped up in this when the compost is ready to move along again. This bin is purely a wood chip bin, so it's been piled up with wood chip to allow the wood chip to rot down, and that stuff is going to make beautiful potting compost and compost to dress the beds with, and compost to add in with the green waste to compost it all together. So this is probably the 4th time I've tried to do this. Just had all kinds of trouble with winds and rain, and anyway, whatever it is today, it is. Alright, so originally when I built these bins last year, I had them here, and I had this sort of 2.5 foot path in front of them, so the bins were here in front of me. And it was so that I could leave that area clear for having compost delivered and muck delivered and everything. But it was just a nightmare, because once you got the barrow down this path you couldn't move, and I was just constantly walking around this bed. So I moved them all to here, which is so much better, because now I can get several wheelbarrows full of different materials, and then I can mix them into the bin as I'm going. I've got a 1 ton or 1,000 litre IBC there for the water. And as I said, this is the actual engine room of the allotment. This is where I produce all the beautiful compost that goes to feed the soil, keeps the soil healthy, therefore the plants are healthy and happy. Now there's nothing really in these bins at the moment. There's a little bit in this one. There's maybe about 6 or 7 inches in the bottom. I've got some footage from December which I'm going to show you. That's when these bins were kind of really in production, but like I said, that compost would probably still be in these now, but for the fact that I had to move them all, so they all have to be taken apart, the contents emptied and put there. Some of the contents are there. The rest of the compost that was in these bins in December has now been spread out on the allotment. It's been put in the polytunnel, it's just been put everywhere. It also went to fill up some buckets for potatoes, I think 10 buckets. So each bin holds just over a cubic metre of compost when it's full. So 2.5 to 3, well 2.5 metres of compost is exactly enough to dress every single bed on the allotment and the polytunnel with about 2 inches of compost. So I mean, filling these up with green waste, believe me, is difficult. You need an awful lot of material, so I can't produce enough material to make the compost for this at the moment. Maybe this year I might be able to get towards it a little bit, so I'm constantly bringing in, I go hunting and gathering for grass clippings, for comfrey, for nettles, for all kinds of different kinds of waste, and I get green waste from some of the other allotment guys on here. They give me bags of stuff that they've cut down, the raspberry canes. Everything will be composted in these bins. The construction, by the way, which I didn't say on the video, is simply 4 pallets. The pallets have had the backs, the blocks and the base skid plates knocked off them, so they're just 4 pallets, just screwed together on the corners with this lid put on them. This material is like a woven plastic which came from the builder's yard, builders merchants. It's what the timber comes wrapped in, so they just throw that away. So it's a really strong woven plastic, and it's brilliant for keeping the rain off these bins and stopping the wind blowing through and cooling them down. Anyway, let's get to this footage. Hey y'all, so I'm here. It's the 7th of December today. It's a beautiful, bright, blue skied, sunny day, and we had a really hard frost last night. You can probably see there the ground is completely frosted over. You get round here, you can see where the sun has just started to clear it off the surface. Yeah, so down here we are really cold down here. We're white over. So let's have a look at these hot bins. Far end, middle, this end. Far end, compost bin. It's the freshest of all the 3 bins. The middle bin is 70 to 80% composted material that's finishing off. This end bin here is another bin I've started only because the other bin at the end was completely full. So I'm just going to open that one up on the end today, because I know it will have sunk over the last 2 days, and I'm going to top it up with some of the stuff out of this bin here. So let's have a look, see if it's still cooking. See, I'm walking on ice here on the ground. And I just know this is going to be hot. Yeah, it's looking really good. Full of fungus. Put these raspberry canes in day before yesterday. All this white stuff here is like a mycelium, like a fungus growing on them, which is going to devour them. I'll just take you over for a quick look. That's what's happening in this bin. Nice fungal layer, but it'll be screaming hot in the middle of there, and that has sunk that much there in 2 days. So I'm just going to top it up now with some compost out of the end bin here. Just some random stuff. This stuff will cook better in there. That's why I'm moving it. That is all I've got to put in. If I had some more greener stuff, so if I had some stuff that was a lot greener, I would put some wood chip on that. But because it's pretty woody, that stuff. Some compost that one of my allotment neighbours gave me, old plant stalks, bits and pieces. Just going to leave that now, let that compost, so it's almost filled the bin. I'll give you a quick look at the construction on these now. Now that bin, the reason I'm using this bin now is because this one has actually got 3 inches of insulation on it. So this bin is going to be much better for composting in winter because it's got extra insulation. It's going to keep that stuff really warm in there. Whereas these bins are ideal for finishing bins and for composting in the summer. So these have just got 1 inch of polystyrene on the sides of them, and like I say, they're great for finishing compost off. And this one is just 1 inch of insulation. If you can afford it, get some of this foam insulation, which has got like the silver paper sort of foil lining on it, because it's so much better than the polystyrene. Polystyrene does actually soak in moisture. So you'll find that these lids, they actually get really heavy as they get concentrated with moisture from the steam and everything. So these are better. This stuff is better because it doesn't tend to suck in the moisture. And this one has got polystyrene on the base, and then it's got these plastic, they're actually soffit boards, just so it makes it easier to shovel the compost off when you're emptying it. Now I'll show you this middle bin here, which has been composting for, I don't know, probably 5 weeks now, I think. And as you can see, it is still composting. Now the bottom half of this one, slightly more than the bottom, probably 2/3 of this is about 2 weeks older. So the stuff below this layer is probably 99% composted, and this stuff went on top of it about 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. This was some stuff that was just finishing off, but as you can see, that is absolutely beautiful already. And there's little bits in, like that's an apple, so the apple's almost composted. This is so hot, it's ridiculous. I can't go down any further than that, it's too hot. But that's what happens. There's all kinds in here. There's horse manure, there's a lot of green stuff, a lot of apples, comfrey, all kinds of stuff. And it's mainly these apples now that need finishing off, because you can see the state of them. They've gone. God, they really smell when they're like this. They smell like puke. But yeah, another month. I got some of this plastic sheeting from the builder's yard. It's what the timber comes wrapped in when they have a delivery. Screwed a batten and a piece of wood through the front of it, and I use these bungee cords just to put tension on it. And that keeps the rain off, because even though there's a little bit of a slope on this, if it rains hard the water does pool up in the centre. So if you're making these, that's why there's a couple of pieces of wood on the back to lift the plastic up a little bit so there's more slope. But these bungee cords hold it tight and just kind of stop the wind getting in, stop the rain getting in. And they also add another layer of insulation to the compost. Hope you got some use from that. The point I maybe didn't make in the video was the compost that gets produced in these bins is completely sort of sterile of any plant diseases which the plants may have as they go in. It's also totally void of any weed seed, because the temperatures in here get up to 65 to 70 degrees centigrade, which is up to about 150 Fahrenheit. That heat is enough to completely cook the contents of this, kill any weed seed, kill any diseases. Even the most hardy weeds like docks and couch grass and mare's tail just cannot survive in this bin, so you can literally put anything in. And because that compost is sterile, when you put it out on your beds there's no weed growing in out the compost. I had 3 bins exactly like this in the 1980s, except back then they were just slatted. They were probably made out of pallets, I think. They were just slatted sides, and the thought was that, you know, you get as much air in as you can to help compost the material. But they do work, but you find that it's only the centre of the bin that gets hot. So everything on the outside of that bin is cool to virtually cold. And once that bin starts to rot down and break down, you eventually tip it into the next bin. And what you do, you throw the outside into the centre to start recomposting. But I always found that the outside, once it's been thrown in and once the initial heat has happened, it never gets as hot again. So weed seed survives, plant diseases can survive, because it's just been literally sat there in that on that outside edge, just waiting to germinate when you put it back on the beds. But this, there's nothing comes out of these bins except beautiful compost. And you know when they're ready, because after about 7 to 8 weeks, all of a sudden the worms just appear. As you start digging to have a look when the heat's gone, or when the heat's going, you'll just find millions of red worms have just come from nowhere, little red wrigglers. They're just right through the compost. You pretty much know then that your compost is ready to go on the ground once that starts, because you're also adding that worm that's in here to the beds, and the worms will carry on breaking down the compost and pulling it into the ground. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that, guys. Give us a thumb up or a thumb down, tell me what you think. Thanks to my patrons, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. We'll do a plot tour, I think, next.